Betty Brant. Betty Brant first appeared in the Amazing Spider-Man #4 in September 1963, created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. She is the personal secretary of J. Jonah Jameson at the Daily Bugle, and served as both supporting character and love interest for Peter Parker, making her the first person in that role across the entire Spider-Man mythos. The contradiction at the heart of her story is immediate and sharp. She became Peter's first love because she was one of the only people at the Bugle who defended Spider-Man, standing up to Jameson over publishing slandering articles against him. And that is the same act that eventually destroyed their relationship. Peter first noticed Betty for that exact moment of moral courage, and it is the same conflict that would later make being with her impossible. The details of that destruction are specific and brutal. Betty's brother, Bennett Brant, was fatally shot during a melee involving Blackie Gaxton's gang, Doctor Octopus, and Spider-Man. Betty blamed Spider-Man for his death. That blame was not a vague resentment. It was grounded in a witness confrontation where the hero she admired was physically present at the event that killed her brother. From that point forward, the relationship with Peter could not survive the weight of what she believed Spider-Man had done. In the comics, that arc played out across issues following her introduction, with the grief and accusation lingering long enough to justify a breakup that felt earned rather than convenient. Elizabeth Banks portrayed Betty Brant in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, and Angourie Rice portrays a teenaged version in the MCU films Spider-Man: Homecoming, Spider-Man: Far From Home, and Spider-Man: No Way Home. Both adaptations pull from the same foundational relationship: secretary at the Bugle, first love, someone who saw Spider-Man through a lens that was ultimately shattered by loss. But neither adaptation traces the full arc of Bennett Brant's death or the specific accusation that ended things. That gap is not a failure of the films, it reflects a structural truth about how this character works. The ordinary explanation for Betty Brant's arc is that she was a victim of Spider-Man's secret identity problem, the classic trope where the hero's loved one pays the price for his double life. For that explanation to fully hold, the relationship would need to be destroyed specifically because Peter is Spider-Man, and Betty finds out. That condition is not what the comics actually show. Betty never learns Peter's secret identity in their primary continuity arc. She blames Spider-Man for Bennett's death independently, and Peter Parker the person is caught in the crossfire of that accusation without the complication of a revealed secret. The breakup is not about a hidden identity being exposed, it is about a grief she cannot process, and a Spider-Man she cannot forgive, and Peter cannot fix either of those things without becoming someone else entirely. What Betty Brant proves about the entire girlfriend category is that every one of Spider-Man's love stories is built around the same structural problem. Spider-Man's existence makes a normal relationship structurally impossible before secrets or identity reveals even enter the picture. Betty was the first instance of that pattern, not the last. Every girlfriend who follows inherits a version of the same equation. Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and Spider-Man makes enemies who reach the people Peter loves, and the math never resolves cleanly. The template was set in issue 4, and every subsequent girlfriend is a variation on that original impossibility. Liz Allen. The situation gets worse because, unlike Betty Brant, Liz Allen never even had a clean ending to her story with Peter. She never actually dated him at all, despite 5 decades of narrative investment. Liz Allen made her first unnamed appearance in Amazing Fantasy #15 in August 1962, was first named in the Amazing Spider-Man #4 in September 1963, and was created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. In her earliest appearances, she was a popular girl at Midtown High School dating Flash Thompson, who considered Peter Parker a loser. Peter tutored her, which sparked her own crush on him, and he carried that crush through high school, while she oscillated between Flash and a growing awareness of him. She remained a supporting character through issue #28 in September 1965, which depicted her and Peter graduating Midtown High School together. Her story kept expanding long after the high school years ended. Liz Allen was revealed to be the stepsister of the Molten Man, Mark Raxton, in Amazing Spider-Man #132-133 in May and June 1974. She met Harry Osborn at the wedding of Ned Leeds and Betty Brant in issue #156, became engaged to him in issue #166, and had a son named Normie after Harry's father Norman Osborn. Harry Osborn's death as the Green Goblin came after he kidnapped Normie, leading to a showdown with Spider-Man. After Harry's death, Liz Allen built Alchemax into a major corporation and later became a symbiote-bonded hero, returning in Superior Spider-Man #17 in 2013 as majority shareholder of Horizon Labs, Peter Parker's employer at the time. She bonded with a symbiote called Misery, formed from portions of the Anti-Venom and Carnage symbiotes, and later had a romance with Daredevil's legal partner Foggy Nelson, which ended in tragedy in Daredevil #8 by Kevin Smith and Joe Quesada. In Sam Raimi's Spider-Man from 2002, Liz Allen was portrayed by Sally Livingstone. In the MCU, Laura Harrier played her in Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man No Way Home. Here is what the comics established clearly. Peter Parker and Liz Allen never actually dated despite their long shared history, though they grew closer after she bonded with the Misery symbiote. The tutoring sessions, the high school crush, the years of proximity, none of it produced a real relationship in the primary continuity. The story invested decades of setup in a romance that the canon explicitly ruled out. What would it take for the ordinary explanation to be true? That Liz was simply a girlfriend who didn't work out. She would need to have been available for a relationship that Peter could actually enter. She was not. She was dating Flash Thompson, then engaged to Harry Osborn, then CEO of 3 major corporations, then a symbiote-bonded hero named Misery, then caught in a cross-continuity romance with Foggy Nelson. Each stage of her life was occupied by something Peter could not compete with, and the narrative kept her moving rather than letting her land with him. The canon answer is not that she rejected Peter, it is that Peter was never the point of her story. She was built to fill out the world Spider-Man operates in, not to end up with him. Liz Allen was built to show the scope of the world Peter Parker moves through and to demonstrate, by never resolving with him, that the Spider-Man life does not leave room for that kind of resolution. Subscribe and tell us in the comments which girlfriend you think was the most consequential. Let's get back into it. Debra Whitman. If Liz Allen was the kind of girlfriend who breezed through Peter's high school orbit, Debra Whitman wasn't someone you glimpsed in a crowded hallway and promptly forgot. She was right there, every day, up close and tangled in the realities of Peter's college life. Her story isn't rare or star-crossed. It's almost painfully ordinary, and that's what makes it impossible to ignore. Debra made her first appearance in The Amazing Spider-Man #196 in September 1979, thanks to Marv Wolfman and Al Milgrom. She wasn't just another student, she worked as a secretary in the biophysics department of Empire State University. That detail is crucial. She wasn't some distant crush or flickering cameo, but part of Peter Parker's actual daily routine. When they started dating, it wasn't in the backdrop of prom night drama or rooftop flirtation. It was embedded in those in-between moments, wedged tightly in the world of lecture halls and paperwork. Their relationship spanned across both Spectacular Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man, threading through the late 70s into the early 80s and surviving plenty of emotional detours. This relationship almost instantly exposes the small-scale chaos of Peter's life. Debra is there when he's late, when he's nervous, when he's balancing Spider-Man responsibilities with the stress of academics and bills. She's asking him questions. She's waiting up for him. Unlike most love interests, Debra's proximity isn't romantic, it's logistical. When Peter is battered, exhausted, or disappearing for days, Debra's confusion becomes the reader's confusion. Is this how a superhero keeps a relationship together? The facts pile up fast. Debra Whitman, Empire State, secretary, each detail shrinks the glamour and amplifies the discomfort. She isn't swept into action sequences, but she is swept into Peter's emotional collateral. In comic terms, the relationship is brief and on and off, but in narrative terms, it's a microcosm of Spider-Man's collateral damage. Debra is always close, never quite in the loop, and always living in the echoes of Peter's secret life. And that is the small version of the problem. Because if you zoom out, Debra's presence marks something raw that most Spider-Man relationships don't. There's nothing epic or tragic here, just a grind. The romance is background noise to Peter's juggling act, and Debra is the one forced to occupy the fallout, without closure, without grandeur. The facts force one implication. The Spider-Man myth is built on high stakes and heroic sacrifice, but Debra Whitman proves that sometimes the girlfriend is just collateral in the daily mess, utterly normal and unremarkably bruised. That is the cost of being Peter Parker's close and common girlfriend. Michelle M.J. Jones. Fine, give the last relationship credit for realism. Debra Whitman could at least chalk her struggles up to a normal life, a job, and the everyday failures of dating a guy distracted by city-sized problems. Michelle Jones gets none of that slack, and the script is merciless about it. MJ, the Michelle version, not the red-haired icon, debuts in Spider-Man: Homecoming. Her full name is Michelle Jones Watson, but you only hear MJ in passing, and that's deliberate. She's played by Zendaya across the Marvel Cinematic Universe films, shaped by a team of writers including Jonathan Goldstein, John Francis Daly, John Watts, Christopher Ford, Chris McKenna, and Eric Summers. Michelle is a reinvention, built as a nod to Mary Jane Watson but fundamentally an original character. Michelle is an original character within the MCU film franchise, created as a nod to Mary Jane Watson rather than a direct adaptation. She arrives as an outsider, a bookish contrarian with an armful of novels and a sharp tongue, John Watts' brainchild, who marches through Homecoming as a smart, snarky classmate. By Spider-Man: Far From Home, she's Peter's love interest, and she's clever enough to deduce he's Spider-Man without needing a radioactive clue. Every film after that escalates her involvement. She helps wrangle multiverse villains in No Way Home, teams up with Ned Leeds in Doctor Strange, and is present for every pivotal moment, only for the relationship to be wiped by Doctor Strange's spell. The world forgets Peter Parker entirely, and the MCU wipes clean the emotional ledger. In the MCU, the memory spell erases the world's knowledge of Peter Parker's identity as Spider-Man, leaving Michelle with no recollection of their romance. The reasonable explanation is simple. Michelle MJ Jones is bookish, witty, and emotionally real, a new take on Mary Jane Watson intended for the MCU's next generation, played by Zendaya with enough bite and warmth to earn widespread acclaim for her performance across the MCU Spider-Man trilogy. She's original, she's clever, and she's designed to fit a modern Peter Parker. That's the official line: a new character, a fresh perspective, and a respectful homage to decades of Spider-Man lore. Except none of that explains the whiplash of how she's used. If Michelle is supposed to be a reinvention, her arc is yanked out of her hands mid-stride. She pieces together Peter's identity, steps into the multiversal chaos, and then, by the rules of the narrative, the entire history is ripped away, erasing not just her memory but their connection. Director John Watts described her as bookish with a stack of books he personally picked, but all those specifics are swept aside by the requirements of a plot eraser spell, so that Michelle is caught living a normal life with no clue what she lost. The facts don't hold up the comfortable explanation. Michelle MJ Jones is bookish on paper, but she's mainly a device, introduced to subvert expectations, then pressed into service for whatever narrative needs are on deck: spy, love interest, multiverse wrangler, and amnesia victim. Her romantic history is surgically removed by narrative fiat, and her ex-boyfriend status becomes little more than a character bio footnote. Zendaya's performance is the glue holding it together, but the underlying mechanism is clear. Michelle Jones isn't the modern Mary Jane. She's the MCU's answer to what a superhero girlfriend can be when the writers willingly rewrite the rules on cue and erase the emotional stakes with a single spell. Gwen Stacy. She is the one relationship Peter Parker actually fought to make work, and she is also the one that broke him so thoroughly, nothing afterward ever quite reassembled. She debuted as Empire State University classmate Gwendolyn Maxine Stacy in The Amazing Spider-Man #31 in December 1965, not as a damsel, not as a plot device, but as a real person Peter was trying to build an actual life with, and for a stretch it looked like he might succeed. Her father, George Stacy, vocally supported Spider-Man's activities, and Peter was actively considering whether to share his secret identity with her when The Amazing Spider-Man #90 ended that possibility permanently. George Stacy was killed while pushing a young boy to safety from falling bricks during Spider-Man's battle with Doctor Octopus, and Peter could never justify sharing such sensitive information with Gwen after that. Then the Green Goblin kidnapped her and dropped her from a great height in 1973 in a story called The Night Gwen Stacy Died. She didn't survive the fall, and Spider-Man couldn't save her in time. That death permanently altered the series and every superhero story that followed it. Gwen Stacy was the daughter of police captain George Stacy and Helen Stacy, one of Peter's early romantic interests, and the first following his high school graduation, and she remained the one person whose loss Peter could never move past. The Night Gwen Stacy Died is not a tragedy Peter recovers from. It is the event that defines every romantic choice he makes afterward, a wound that never fully closes, and a name he can never say without feeling the weight of everything he failed to protect. Felicia Hardy. Where Gwen Stacy's story ended in irreversible loss, Felicia Hardy's began with a deliberate breakout, and that difference is the entire point. She first appeared in the Amazing Spider-Man #194 in July 1979, created by Marv Wolfman and Dave Cockrum, debuting in the Black Cat outfit for one specific purpose: breaking her father out of prison. Her father, Walter Hardy, had mentored her to become a thief, and when he was incarcerated, she put on the costume and went to get him, which put her on a direct collision course with Spider-Man. That first encounter could have ended like every other crossover between a Spider-Man rogue and the wall crawler. Her defeated, her mission collapsed, but instead it began something neither of them planned. The distrust she arrived with gradually reshaped itself into genuine romantic attraction, each encounter reshaping Felicia's view of Spider-Man from adversary to ally, until the adversarial frame no longer held. Felicia's arc followed a path Gwen's never could, where Gwen was pulled into Peter's world and destroyed by it. Felicia walked into that same orbit fully aware of the cost and chose to stay anyway, on her own terms. Over time, Black Cat shifted from criminal to ally, joining the Avengers and fighting alongside Spider-Man as a full partner. Peter Parker's pattern of falling for women who operate outside the system connects his two most significant romances in a way few superhero stories attempt. Mary Jane Watson. The Black Cat tried to twist the rules of the Spider-Man love story, but Mary Jane Watson is the reason there were ever rules to break in the first place. Mary Jane Watson first appeared in a cameo in the Amazing Spider-Man #25, June 1965, with her first full appearance in issue #42, November 1966, with 6 words that did more for pop culture than most writers manage in a career. Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot. That moment isn't an introduction, it's a debut, and it instantly crystallizes her as the cornerstone the entire series swings around. By the numbers, nobody even comes close. Mary Jane was created by Stan Lee, writer, Steve Ditko, artist-writer, and John Romita Sr., artist. And unlike every girlfriend before her, she doesn't orbit Peter Parker. She stands shoulder to shoulder with Spider-Man and instantly rewrites the rules about who belongs in his world. She's no secret identity casualty, no side quest romance tucked away between punchlines, no damsel parked on the edge of the page. In panel after panel, she's life in the middle of the chaos, the voice that cuts through it, and, eventually, the woman who marries Peter Parker and, in some universes, takes his last name as Mary Jane Watson Parker. What nobody likes to say out loud is that, despite all the drama, all the other contenders, and all the splashy breakups the comics like to resurrect every 5 years, Mary Jane is the one love interest who isn't defined by how much pain she can take or how often she can be put in danger. She's defined by the life she chooses, and chooses to share with Peter. Not as collateral, not as a plot device, but as the main love interest across the comics, the Raimi trilogy, and key animated adaptations. The other girlfriends come and go, disappearing into retcons or reboots. Mary Jane is a key figure. Once she appears in the books, the series embraces her as a central character. She isn't just a side character swept along by Spider-Man's story. She bulldozes her way to the center and becomes the benchmark that every other love interest is measured against. The cold open wasn't an introduction. It was a declaration of intent, and every single adaptation since then has had to reckon with what it means to feature Mary Jane. Any fan trying to explain why Spider-Man matters in the first place will end up quoting her, whether they mean to or not. Face it, Tiger, she was always the jackpot. Anna Maria Marconi. Love used to just change Peter's life. Anna Maria Marconi changed his entire reality. She did not appear in some secret corner of spider lore. She crashed right into the primary continuity in the Superior Spider-Man #5, dated May 2013, and made her presence felt. From the moment she arrived, an entirely new network of consequences uncoiled around Peter Parker. Anna Maria isn't just another name on the list. She was a love interest for Spider-Man during a key storyline that shifted how readers saw the character. Created by Dan Slott and Giuseppe Camuncoli, Anna Maria steps onto the campus of Empire State University as an undeniable force, her intellect as formidable as her refusal to be treated as anything less than extraordinary. She's a young woman with dwarfism who is presented as a gifted scientist and student. In practice, that single fact becomes a kind of narrative gravity. It resets the rules of Peter's relationships, wipes out tired tropes about secrets and hidden double lives, and makes the emotional math of the story something genuinely new. When she becomes involved with Spider-Man during the Superior Spider-Man run, Otto Octavius was controlling Peter Parker's body and life. Suddenly, every interaction, every romantic gesture, every complicated feeling isn't just one person's arc. It's a fault line running through Spider-Man's entire ecosystem. Anna Maria is the fixed point that tests not just Peter's character but the core idea of who Spider-Man even is, and how far the echoes of his decisions can spread. The entire supporting cast gets drawn into her orbit, and she quietly becomes the emotional anchor not just for Peter, but for an entire web of relationships that never existed before she walked onto the page. When all the dust settles, Anna Maria isn't just another tick on a list of X's. Her presence answers a question the comics had barely considered. What happens when a love interest changes, not just the man under the mask, but the very world Spider-Man moves through?